Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into Stack and Dubs. I am your host, Chris Chin. We're here to talk about nothing other than Jonathan Kuminga. As always, it is July 17th, and we've got a little bit of news, which is also a much ado about nothing because nothing's really happening other than we're getting a little bit of sneak peek into some of the conversations that the Warriors and Kuminga's agent and essentially what Jake Fisher and Mark Stein are essentially hearing is developing or lack of developing. And we'll just kind of jump into it today. I want to just talk a little bit about the most recent statement we had from the Stein line, and I'm just going to kind of read exactly what we heard. I'm sure you've heard the basic details, but sounds like there's been numerous discussions between Turner and the Warriors officials in Vegas, and they tell the Stein line that league sources are saying that Kuminga's hope is securing a contract, even a short-term contract that pays at least 25 million in average annual salary, whether it's to stay with the Warriors or be traded to another team via sign and trade. That's the first part. And then the second news essentially continued is that sources say that the Warriors have expressed reluctance to go that high in price over a long-term agreement, while also seeking some sort of seeking some level of first round draft compensation in any theoretical trade that ships Kuminga elsewhere. Okay, so we're going to digest a bit of it. We'll start with the first, and then we'll talk about why I'm extremely frustrated by the second, and it just has me slapping my head, and I'm sure you guys are frustrated too. Let's start with the $25 million value. I'm not surprised that Kuminga's camp is asking for 25 mil. Last year, we all know that they asked for 5 years, 150 mil, which would have been about 30 million average annual value. I quite frankly thought at this point he still might be asking for 28 to 30. So 25 mil is probably about on target from what he should be asking for if I were him. I don't think he's going to get that. There's obviously no market. The restricted free agent market is zilch. And essentially, he has no leverage on the Warriors other than to threaten to sign the qualifying offer. And in that case, everybody loses because he's playing for less money, and the Warriors are going to lose him after that for no value. The Warriors are not going to pay him $25 million. Let's look at their cap. So right now they're at about $170 million on their cap. We're gonna say the second apron is at about 208. So we're saying that the Warriors have about $38 million to play with if they're going to go all the way up against that second apron. We have 9 players signed right now. It does not include any of our rookies or two-way contracts. We need to get to 15. I guess you can start the season with 14 if you need to, but eventually you're going to have to spend a little bit of money to fill out the roster. Assuming, and I hope we can assume, that the Warriors have handshake agreements with Al Horford at that uh, mid-level exception, which would be 5.7 million in that case. Assuming a handshake agreement with D'Anthony Melton, who by multiple sources who have just been hanging out, Warriors insiders in Vegas over Summer League, and Melton's there and just kind of chit-chatting and hanging out. Sounds like Melton is coming to the Warriors. That's not a firm commitment, but just based on people reporting on head nods and light conversations, it sounds like the Warriors have a handshake agreement with D'Anthony Melton. Great. He'd be on a minimum, and at his service level, I think it's about 3 million there. Then I need to fill in so that's 11 players. You need to fill in about 3 more spots plus Kuminga. So 3 more spots at $2 to $3 million minimums is what we're going to assume. That puts you before Kuminga at 14 players at about 185 to 188 million. Again, the second apron is 208. So you're talking 20 to 23 million dollars to get Kuminga signed in terms of his in terms of his salary for next season. It's getting tight. I mean, I guess if you said, hey, Kuminga take 23, he's at 25, he would come down to 23. So it's doable, but there's not a ton of wiggle room, especially depending on the minimums that you're signing. If you sign a veteran, the more service years you have, the higher that minimum is. So now you're talking close to $3 million on each minimum, and that's kind of reducing whatever you can pay Kuminga, but there's still a little bit of wiggle room. What the Warriors have floated the idea of is a trade kicker. And the way that works is essentially they're telling Kuminga, resign with us. if and when we do trade you, you're essentially going to get a bonus for the first season, courtesy of your new team. So we trade you to team ABC. Your contract is currently $20 million. We are paying you that $20 million initially. Once you get traded, the Sun, or sorry, not the Suns, the team ABC is taking on that, plus an additional, call it 15% trade kicker. So that in that case, it'd be an extra $3 million. So the Suns would be paying him $23 million that first year. If he has any additional years on that contract, those are unaffected. Those stay the same amount on whatever contract he agreed with the Warriors. Again, so add 15%. And the great tool on this is that not only do the Warriors not have to pay that, it counts as outgoing salary. So you trade Kuminga. We all know about the base year compensation and outgoing salary. You can trade him for his full amount if we're talking mid-season. I believe January 15th, not December 15th, January 15th in the base year that you re-sign him, he can be traded. And essentially you can now get recoup 23 million. You're sending out 23 million dollars in matching salary so you can get a slightly better player. So that's how the trade kicker would work. It's a good tool for the Warriors to use. Obviously the new team acquiring him, that makes it a little tougher because they'd have to pay him a little bit extra on top, but gives the Warriors room to maneuver under that second apron to start this year and then also recoup the best and highest salaries coming back mid-season, assuming Kuminga plays well and still has, actually doesn't still have, he doesn't really have a market right now. Assuming he plays well, outplays his contract, and has a market mid-season for someone that would be an upgrade. That's how the numbers play out. Personally, if it was me, I would do something similar. I would do like a 3-year deal with Kuminga, bring him back. I think bringing him back is like the only option for the Warriors at this point. We'll get into that in a second, but call it $22 million, assuming you can get all your minimums and veterans signed there. 22 million a year, then you add a 15% trade kicker, so that would put him closer to like 26 million in outgoing salary if you do trade him. And for him, Kuminga, you're happy you're over 25 million in annual salary. Then year 2, year 3, you're talking, call it, keep that around like 23, 25 million in that year if you really want to. We'll figure that out as the time comes. I wouldn't extend him for anything more than 3 years at this point for obvious reasons. Okay, so that's the Kuminga. If you decide to keep him, that seems to be the route to go. Again, he has no leverage. Unless he's just going to sit out or take the qualifying offer, which would make him less money, he's kind of at the Warriors' mercy for whatever they're willing to pay him. Okay, talking about trades. So the news came in also yesterday that the Phoenix Suns, basically all these inept, incapable franchises are all the ones that are interested in Jonathan Kuminga. Well, the Suns, add them to that list. They recently waived and stretched Bradley Beal, who's going to the Clippers, so they have a little bit of room against their cap. I don't know how much room they have. It would still be pretty tough for them to make this work. But they have interest in Kuminga and apparently have spoken to his agent and are speaking to the Warriors, and we'll see what can be worked out. As far as what the Suns even have, I mean, I guess Royce O'Neal is really the only piece. He's 32, which I guess doesn't really matter, but he's not young. He's making about $10 million coming back in a trade. The thing I like about him is he shoots. He's a shooter. He's got a decent size to him, but he's a shooter. He's shot basically 40% last year on a 5.5 attempts per game. Played over 70 games the last 3-4 seasons in a row and shot right at high 39 to 40% from three and all those, again on good volume. So he gives you that spacing that you essentially are replacing with, like, when you lost Wiggins. Solid defender, gives you decent size, only like a 9 points per game guy, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, which isn't terrible. A veteran, so he'll fit. He's been playing about 25 minutes a game. I'd assume the Warriors would use him somewhat in that capacity, just as wing depth. Doesn't really make your starting or closing five any better, and ultimately that's all that matters. So sure, it's a good depth piece. Here's the problem. If you're the Warriors, taking a higher level view, we're playing to win. I'm playing to win. I don't know what the Warriors are doing. Most of the fans, myself, sure, the future, you don't want to be terrible in the future. But you're not winning anything. I've said it a zillion times. The Thunder, the Spurs, the Rockets, you're not beating any of them in the West over the next 5, 10 years, even. This is your chance to go for it for Steph Curry. You're a generational player. Now is the time to go all in. Damn the picks. If you go for it now. Even if you want to do a little mini kind of hedge of a two timelines, at least use a couple of your picks now and then trade outgoing salaries and just get yourself another fringe third scorer, fringe all-star, someone that can give you a chance to be competitive and a contender in the next couple years with Steph. Then hit the reset. You might still have a couple picks. You might have no picks. Guess what? In the NBA these days, the way to rebuild is just tank completely, reset, be bad for a few years, get the picks, and then 5, 7 years from now, you start over. Hopefully, you get hit on the next Steph Curry. You have not hit on a generational player in Kuminga, Pajemski, Moody, any of those guys. So, all that being said, kind of honing back in, my point is that if you're taking back Royce O'Neal's $10 million in that contract, even if you get a first round pick back from them just to recoup some value, great. We're sitting on a whole bunch of first round picks. Can we trade that to even get anyone to help us? What player out there are we going to be able to trade all these picks for when we only have Royce O'Neal, Buddy Hield, Moses Moody making about like average $10 million each? Unless you're sending out Jimmy Butler in that big contract, you're not going to get a superstar back. You could pair Dre and a few of those guys and some picks. Maybe that way you can get an all-star, but you're still breaking up your core of Steph, Dre, and Jimmy. So outside of those three, you really don't have any options or vehicles to aggregate salaries so that even if someone like, I won't use Giannis, but say an all-star who's making 40, $50 million is available, yeah, you have the picks to make it happen, but you almost don't even have the salaries to make it match. So for that reason alone, you have to re-sign Kuminga. And that leads me to my other point. Why are we hunting a first round pick? You're not going to, we're not, if anything, it tells me that they're just trying to get anything of value just to get Kuminga off the books. And yeah, even though we're technically going for it, getting a pick, I mean, you use that as trade value. You're just trying to recoup some value here. But again, you're not going to be able to do. You've shown that you're not trading picks. I don't know what the deal is with this, but you've shown that you haven't included first round picks in anything. Getting another first round pick, okay, like you're still not going to compete with anybody in the West or the NBA, of these young and up and coming teams. I don't understand why you're trying to accumulate first round picks. I don't understand why you're not just trying to move all your first round picks and get the best player possible. A first does nothing for the near future, and that's the plain and simple of it. What I would do is, and I mean, I hope Dunleavy has been trying to do this. I hope Joe Lacob's been fine with this. I haven't heard anything about trying to package and attach a bunch of first round picks to Kuminga to go get Kobe White, Trey Murphy, or Herb Jones when he was available. Any of these guys that are clear upgrades or at least decent role players that are going to be, in your closing lineup instead of Kuminga and they fit a little bit better. Attach as many first round picks as you need to. I don't care for all the reasons I said. Even if you just cut that at two first round picks, you can part with your next two first round picks. You still have Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler. They're probably not going to be super high first round picks. You can part with your whatever it is, your 2027 and your 2028 first round picks. Probably going to be mid to late picks anyways. Attach those to Kuminga. Go get Kobe White. Should have done that for Cam Johnson. I don't understand why the Warriors haven't been dangling that carrot unless truly they haven't. There's just no demand for Kuminga at all. And I guess what that says is, hey, there's literally nothing we can do other than re-sign him and try again mid-season because trading him for a first round pick and a Royce O'Neal, it's better than nothing, but barely. I hate it, guys. I guess I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't need to talk too much more about this. We're just waiting for news to break. I just wanted to vent and while I'm patient and while if we already had signed Horford and we already had signed Melton, I think we'd be a little bit more at ease and we had have called this a fairly successful offseason so far. I think that's the case that we still have them, but a bird in the hand is worth more than two in the bush, or wherever the saying goes. We got no birds. We just have Kuminga who's holding everything up. And to that point, the Warriors should have done much more of this negotiating up front with Kuminga. You knew that there was a good chance once the Nets made the trade for Cam Johnson that no one was going to be able to offer him a restricted deal. At that point, you should have been hammering out what the contract would look like to Kuminga, so that way you can at least start moving and figure out how you're going to fill in the rest of the roster around Kuminga. Now you're just sitting here and it's talking about going into August and no one has any idea what and when it's going to look like. And until then, you have Melton, you have Horford, and you have who knows, Seth Curry, maybe Ben Simmons, who I actually don't mind as a backup center to Draymond Green. He's kind of remade himself. I could see him in kind of that big stretch, not a stretch, but a small ball center role. Get those guys on minimums, but maybe they're just sitting around in a handshake agreement is not an agreement on paper. And that's all the Warriors are living with right now. You lose Horford, you lose Melton, and whether you sign Kuminga or not, it's not a good offseason and you're not contending next year. Um, and maybe you aren't if you sign them all anyways. So there it is, guys. I will be back with you hopefully as soon as we get news. Until then, I'll be walking around LA with my new Draymond Green jersey. It's kind of a scary game. I feel like I'm going to be judged. Has anyone worn a Draymond Green jersey out in public outside the Bay Area? I think I'm going to get dirty looks, and I'm all here for it. All right, you guys have a wonderful one. Until next time, I have been Chris Chin. Peace, love, and stacking dubs.